And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This Vlogcast started as a combination of a spite and the Streisand effect because I needed an excuse to fuel my alcohol habit, which I really don't have a habit. I don't drink very often. Tonight is one of those nights, actually. I have to speak bilingually. I'll explain. Part of such follow through with the old adage, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I am your main host. I am known as Shujin Tribble all over the place. It's kind of hard to miss me, Shujin. Let me go ahead and introduce you to a truncated group at the moment. We'll kind of work it from there and see how it plays out. Top left-hand corner of the bingo card, Dalan. Good evening.
Good evening.
And south and to the right of me a little bit, outside of... where stuff is heating up yet again, figuratively, literally. Unrenewed Tech, good morning.
God, I hate that blur thing. Yep. It fails every time. Yeah.
It's not like you're working with one of those red cameras. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, I don't have donations coming in for that, to do the work of some Sky Daddy.
Yeah.
And even if I did have that, I probably wouldn't end up spending the money on it like I said I would because,
You know what? All you got to do is just shoot a few more vertical videos at a Starbucks demanding a particular color of a cup. You'll be just fine.
That's the sad thing. There are so many atheists out there that if we decided to get together and scam the religious right, we could take them for every penny.
Oh, don't get me wrong.
We could take them for every single last nickel and dime.
No. Only about 10% of that money. Remember, there's only so much that even we are willing to go ahead and do.
Yeah. But the other thing,
what I'm saying is that we could play the game so much better.
Yeah. The trouble is, there's the old adage of getting a bunch of atheists together to do something that's like herding cats.
No, it's more of the case of, we all have disagreements. Atheists are as diverse as religious people. We have atheists who are pro-life and ones that are pro-choice. Ones that are pro-gun and other are pro-gun control, which pro-gun and pro-gun control are not mutually exclusive unless you're a member of the NRA.
Fearless.
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt your Fearless. I'm going to counter that with one phrase, 501c3.
Yep.
Which is a tax-free organization, which is what the churches are right now. And look, if the Satanist temple can attain that status, I think I'm pretty sure any one of us could at this point. Well, any of you guys south of the border, up here might be a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
And, it just, we know how to play the game. Because it's been played on us and we finally woke up to it.
Yeah, but the trouble is, I think a lot of us are too busy reading r/pro-revenge to actually come up with something.
Yeah.
So, let me go ahead.
Pro-revenge is great, though.
I know. I just discovered it this week. Holy shit.
Oh, this week? Dude, I've been reading it for the last year and a half. That thing is filled with Schadenfreude.
Dude, pro-revenge is what we used to call techcomedy.com. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fine. But the thing is, I was just derping around on YouTube a couple of earlier this week, and all of a sudden, somehow, this thing pops up on my suggested for, let me read you a pro-revenge story. I'm listening to this. I'm like, did that actually happen?
Just watch out for nuclear revenge. That one.
Oh,
no.
That
one can be a little cringy.
Supernova revenge.
We'll deal with all that.
By the way, a little known fact. There's one called Tasty Revenge. That one's cool.
Haven't seen that one yet.
It's there.
Fair enough. For those of you that are watching, yes, Joseph was just here and is gone again because he can't hear anybody, and we'll deal with that in a little bit. So in the meantime, for those of you that are watching live, of course, there are a couple of you. Thank you very much, as always. We really do appreciate it. We know for well, Fearless is there, Doc Wax is there, Trippin, Stephanie. Hi, guys. Good to have you. And as I was mentioning, yes, I do actually have a we're getting rid of it purchase kind of locally. So tonight, I'm actually trying out Modelo.
Modelo, good stuff.
I don't know. I've again, another one I've never tried before. It was on a closeout at the gas station. So it was like, why not? It's one I've never tried before. So
Wait a minute,
we'll
did I
see.
screw up the name?
You see, this is going to be great because tomorrow I have to put together a chili for a potluck that's happening when I go home next weekend. But it's also going to be stinking hot in the place. So I'm going to use that excuse to drive north to my favorite little beer store and go check out all the stuff that they've been advertising on Facebook this week because, oh my, they've brought back the Mijito on tap. The 64-ounce growler is coming out of retirement.
So let's see if we've got you. Joseph,
never mind.
Actually there.
Joseph, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah, now I can.
There
you
we
are.
go.
By the way, I was wrong about Tasty Revenge. It just reroutes back to Petty Revenge.
That's okay.
Never skip it over.
So from over the water into Paris, France. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, everyone.
Good to have you. By the way, a little something I told the guys before we went to air. You remember how we occasionally have the small problem of you don't really know what's going on ahead of time until you just kind of get here? I was over on the I was managing the Facebook stuff, and I went to check. There is still for several months now a pending invite for you to the HCTV Facebook page. So you're not getting notices because you haven't actually officially joined the page yet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You can see how important Facebook is to me.
That's fine. I kind of figured as much, but it was a matter of I just saw that it's just like, I wonder why that long is it? Okay, well that explains a lot.
Can you send that again?
I don't know. Actually, I think I looked at I will check. I will check later and see what I can do about that.
Okay.
But
in the meantime, I'll look through. I don't even know where to find my invites.
Anyway, don't worry about that. So anyway, for those that are wondering, I do still have my Luna. The fun has been doubled mug because there's reasons. Which, by the way, I did get to thank the guys that I bought this. Sorry, I didn't buy this one. They gave to me, which I'm still terribly thankful for. And every time I go to Anthrocon, they're there. I go over, I say hi, I check in on them, and let them know that I'm still grateful, still thankful, and it's still going for me. Okay, so this is one of those ones where I'm supposed to pour this very carefully to not get ahead on it. I'm assuming, Dalan, right?
Yeah. Well, the trick is to tilt the glass while you're tilting the can. So there you go.
I'm assuming.
Yeah. And then just slowly tilt the glass back up, and you'll see that the head doesn't form.
That's a good one. I'm not being racist here. Okay, I'm being serious. I like that with a taco.
See, look at that. Now, okay, where does that come from, you may ask? That comes from 4 years of pouring beer for the Calgary Flames at the Saddle Dome while I was in college.
Well, there you go.
You know where I learned how to do that?
College.
12 years old after mowing the lawn with my dad.
Yeah, you see, the only thing my dad had at the time was a beer called Cool Spring, and it was like a light beer, something along the lines of Coors Light.
Well, he taught me to do it with the Genesee Cream Ale, because if you just take a Genesee Cream Ale and go like this, you get a head that's like 3 times the size of the glass.
Yeah. See, this is why pouring things like Guinness is an art.
Yes.
Because of that very reason.
I love getting served a pint of Guinness from somebody who's actually certified by Guinness to pour one.
The James Joyce in downtown Calgary is an authentic Irish pub where you actually walk up to the bar and you can say, I'll have a pint of English or I'll have a pint of Irish. They're both Guinness, The difference is the temperature at which they're poured.
Oh, there you go.
Irish, of
And they
course,
know the difference. That's great. That's
Yep.
a bar I would frequent.
and the food. Oh, I used to
They
go
have
there
good fish and chips.
I used to go there for St. Patty's Day, and fish and chips if you want.
I love
But you
fish
can
and chips.
no, but they do a wicked Irish stew. Let me tell you, like I said, it's an authentic Irish bar.
I'm not a fan of stews. That's the problem. But I'm a lover of fish.
That's okay.
I've got a few places I could take you around here.
Dude,
I'm
I
looking-
have got to come up for a visit up there. I
Mhm.
need to see Canada.
So a couple things. Item one, I'm getting complaints that I did not freeze my mug. There's reasons for that. Mostly just poor planning on my part. So
Poor, what was it? Poor prior planning. I forgot what the hell that thing goes. Somebody
Yeah,
else
yeah.
knows it.
Tripping.
I know which one you're talking about.
Tripping. I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I think the only time I've ever had beer out of a frozen mug was when I was in Mexico.
Yeah, well, this one does say brewed in Mexico, by the way.
Well,
I'm looking on the bottle to see the can. Sorry, if
Mhm.
there's any kind of an expiration of any kind. I don't see anything on the side. I don't see anything on the top. And screw you if you think that I'm going to turn it upside down because there's still a little bit left in there.
I'll
I have
tell you
many
this,
things. I ain't that stupid.
Shujin.
Yeah.
You can usually tell when a beer goes bad, and I can tell you how. When a beer goes bad, it goes what we call skunky, which means when you sniff it, it smells almost like a skunk.
No.
Unless it's Corona in the clear bottle, because it always smells like shit.
Okay. So the question.
I actually did not know that, so thank you for teaching me something new.
So the question is not enough room. There's the top of it,
Just
and I
enough.
think this is technically there's enough that I could probably get the very last, but we will see. And I got a lot of foaming coming from the bottom of this sucker
Yeah, no, that's
for some reason.
Ooh,
that's a good pour.
neat little trick. If your beer ever seems to have stopped fizzing, and you know there's still plenty of carbonation via taste in there, but you want that fizz to be happening, just take a light little sprinkle of salt over the top. It'll cause it to fizz right back up again.
I'll pass.
But don't keep doing that, otherwise you're really going to salt your beer.
Well, that's I'll pass on that. So, Chaim.
Mhm.
L'chaim.
Sorry, I don't have enough phlegm in my throat for that one.
L'chaim.
Probably sounds better in the original German. Okay, it's not bad. It's still kind of beer, but it's not as bad as what I was afraid of.
Yeah,
That's great with the
I've had
taco,
some other
man.
one.
yeah.
You-
So it's probably it's mostly like a lighter brew, not as hoppy. It's a little more commercial than a craft beer.
Modelo Cerveza
Mhm.
Especial.
Yeah, like
Anything that's got some
Alright.
decent seasoning going on, that's a great pair with.
Pilsner
When
style. Okay.
When I was in Mexico, I got to try a couple of different types of Corona because let me put it this way: the stuff we get up here,
This
the
shit.
stuff they advertise about, on the beach and everything like that, that ain't the good stuff.
No.
There's another one down there. It actually comes in a brown bottle. That's the stuff.
Dude, as soon as you cross the border with alcohol into America, it's got to it has to stay within guidelines of a certain percentage of alcohol by volume, depending on what kind of alcohol it is
Oh.
and where you're selling it and everything else. And it's
I
just like
understand. I
That-
understand that.
that's why it's really fun to watch Americans who have no concept of this go to Canada, get a beer, and fall out of their chair.
To be fair,
Fair.
I have had a couple of kick you in the ass craft beers in the States. Anybody who was at the last Anthrocon I was at, I think back in 2015, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. Why? Because me, Elector Fencer, and about 20 other people from AC got falling down face drunk at the church. And let me tell you, there were some beers there that would put a few Canadian beers to shame.
Yeah, one of these years I gotta finally find my way over there. We gotta see about that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and get everything rolling over here. Tripping is saying Southern U.S. alcohol content is 8%.
I would
Okay,
explain some of the beers I had down in Oklahoma.
it could very well be. But for the moment, like I said, it's not bad. It's not as bad as a lot of other ones that I've had, where it's just
Yep.
like sip. It's like no.
Yep.
The downside is because of the way that the can was, I kind of got some on the tabletop. Nothing in the keyboard, at least. Because remember, this is a PC keyboard, not an Amiga keyboard. I can't run this through the dishwasher. Amiga keyboards you could do that with.
I remember.
So okay, not so bad. So we will see how this plays out. Meanwhile, of course, let me go and get us actually properly running, and we'll kind of go from here. So, with 5 minutes on the clock, your 5-minute freestyle, and I wrote down notes this time. Gives you an idea. Starts right now. I went ahead and I was trying to figure out what to write about, and I put something over in the Discord, which kind of I did it because I didn't want to lose track of the idea. My little one has been to the Buffalo Institute for Genocide and Human Rights. I forget exactly what the name of the group is off the top of my head. We are going to have the head of the organization on the show in the near future because there's a thing that's happening with this that I want him to get some publicity for, be that as it may. But one of the ideas was I suddenly had this idea because it is now pool season. I had an idea in my head, and I can't tell you exactly off the top of my head what it came from. I'm pretty sure it was because one of the groups of students, yes, we're talking like upwards of high school, they were supposed to come up with some mock ideas on how to help put together a fundraiser of sorts, and they're mock-ups. And one of them was for the homelessness issue, as I recall, or at least it got me to thinking about it because, well, we end up hearing a lot about, well, why aren't we helping the people who are homeless here at home already before we take care of everybody else? Okay, well, let's kind of think about that. And I went ahead and I checked to find out what the National Lottery, otherwise known as Powerball, is currently. And according to the numbers I came up with, it said that currently the Powerball lottery is in the $550 million point. Now, this is not nearly the largest that it's been. You remember, at one point it was upwards of $1 billion plus. However, going with $550 million, I thought, okay, that's a lot of money. Let me go looking for some information. And I did. I did a cursory look to find out how much a plot of land. I know there's some people who know me as a Brody who are giggling right about now. Shut up. Roughly a plot of land of approximately 0.15 of an acre. Now, where I grew up on Long Island, we had a third of an acre, so 0.3 acre. And it was a good enough size for a family of 5 with 2 cars and property enough to be able to, run around on. So I thought, okay, according to the numbers, Western New York or WNYhomeless.org says that in Erie County, where Buffalo is located, Erie County has approximately 5,700 homeless people. I'm finagling the numbers a little bit, so just bear with me a little bit. Roughly 5,700 people. 25% of which are children. Keep that in mind. However, we are also looking at 70% are single adults. Of them, 70% are male. So, of the people that we're dealing with, the vast majority are single men in the homelessness area here. What kills me, though, is to find out that, according to their statistics, in Erie County, African Americans make up approximately 13% of the population. 52% of the people that are homeless, according to this group, are people of color, African American. So like I said, I was doing the numbers. And a cursory look of 23 properties in very close to the Buffalo area that are residential had an average of approximately $25,000 at 0.15 acre. Enough room for a person, a small house, and enough to have room for a car, maybe a garden. You get the idea. Cheapest that I was figuring out, well, who does low-income housing? Well, let's see. Habitat for Humanity. They'll do a house for $90,000. I'm technically out of time, but I don't care. I'm going to keep going on this one. If you were to go ahead and say a $90,000 house by Habitat for Humanity plus $25,000 as an average at 0.15 acre, you're talking about $115,000. The Powerball, if that was put towards the homeless issue specifically, you would then have housing specifically 4,782 houses. We're not talking any extra amenities. We're not talking power. We're not talking water. We're not talking cable. We're not talking about anything like that. Just housing. Paid for outright. Done. How many people would that serve? Okay, let's say all of them. All of them. If you were to take a quarter of that money, if you were to get a quarter of it, if you took a lump sum, paid off everything, a quarter of that, you would have over 1,100 houses that could be put together. And how many people would that help? How many families? How many people could be just off the street, given an opportunity to put themselves back into shape, to make themselves somebody again, to have somewhere where they can have the dignity to say, I have a home. What does a pool have to do with it? Simple. All we would have to do is pool our money. Don't we already have more than enough places that are intended for exactly that? GoFundMe, Patreon, Coffee, Kickstarter. There are plenty of opportunities to do exactly this. It's just a matter of actually hunkering down and pooling our resources. Or, you know, here in the States, we could just do what we've always done and just keep putting it towards bombs and bullets because, I mean, that's worked so well for so long, right? It's kind of hard to cuddle up against a Vulcan bullet. It's episode 271 on the docket, Your Honor. Teaching is normally good. Yeah. I'm hoping that people took a look at the notes to see that, yeah, I don't know who the hell it was that decided this was a good idea out there in South Dakota, but yeah, they're figuring that putting up the national motto, and we're going to get to that too, of "In God We Trust" in a very large lettering font, in very...
I see you saw my post.
Yeah, in very obvious locations.
12 by 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and me, the first thing that I was thinking was, so this is what happens when Rowdy Roddy Piper put the sunglasses on, but without the sunglasses. Yeah, there's a movie reference for some of you folks.
Somebody actually made that reference in Reddit for that article, and they actually did a translation where they were pretending they were Roddy Piper, and looking at the sign in the school, and then the sign suddenly saying, "Eat, sleep, reproduce,
Hate.
or
Obey.
die," something like that. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, same business as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to put up. Let's see. IMDb. Them.
No.
No. It's they live.
Yep.
Sorry, them is a totally different thing, and it's supposed to have an exclamation point. Sorry, nuclear testing and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have at this because there are a number of problems with this. Some are completely obvious, some are completely insidious, and others of them are just dumb. One would think that some educators should actually be smart about things, but we'll get to all that. I unfortunately have not heard anything new on Rafe Badawi's case, which is, as we know all too well, just too much the norm than not. As of the recording of tonight's show, this has now been 7 years, 1 month, 13 days since he was unjustly incarcerated for thought crimes. Our hopes and our thoughts are still with you and your family. We are still hoping and we are still waiting.
By the way, it's called They Live.
That's what I put into the.
Oh, I see the second one. Sorry.
Yeah. So
I was seeing the them part. I was like,
them. Yeah, like I said, them is supposed to have an exclamation point, and that's the ants from the 50s.
Gotcha.
I remember that when I was a kid, man. That was actually kind of fun. I was never creeped out by that. I always thought it was funny, but I guess it's probably because I was able to semi-simulate what the ants sounded like on my violin, because I was really bad violinist for a while. I got better. I got better. Anyway, so let's. I was told there wasn't going to be math. You know what, Trippin? You're right. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, you can always log out.
Oh.
It's a sign of the times, man. It's the summertime. You like my tan? That's all I got. I'm not going any further than that. I don't want to be a very radical type person. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, nothing. Just the audible version of a facepalm. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, let's start off with item number 1 about this whole damn thing. How? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one point. An audible facepalm works better when you have a bit of stubble.
Which is really sad since I shaved today.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
No, nothing wrong with that. Okay, so show of hands. By the way, Brigid is not with us because she is feeling under the weather. She did get in touch with me. Joey is still MIA because he's still kind of getting some things organized. He's okay. I did speak with him relatively recently, so we're good there. And Chris, of course, is still being a pissant because he doesn't show up anymore. Because, I don't invite him because he said not to. So, fuck off. So the show of hands, like I said, is anybody besides me really creeped out with the idea that there is a mandated, you must show this set of words to the people that you're supposed to be teaching in this institution because reasons? I'm sorry. I'm a little creeped out by that now. Thank you very much.
Look, if it's a Catholic school or some other religiously funded school, fine. If it's an Islamic school that wants to put up, verses from the Quran or whatever, and because, that's all part of it, fine. But if this is a publicly funded school that is supposed to, by law, welcome people regardless of faith, color, sex, gender, orientation, or ideology, then that phrase cannot, must not, and should not be on anything in that school property except the currency, because, well, you ain't got a whole lot of choice about that right now. That's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
In the article that I sent, link to Shujin, it said that at least 2 students got together from like their school student council or something like that, and petitioned or went to the group making the decision saying, hey, look, can we substitute Allah for God or Yahweh? And apparently they were met with dead silence.
Yeah. Translation
is freedom of religion is fine so long as it's my religion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which not Wiener, but who was the other jagoff that
most of the Republicans that are in office right now are like that.
Well, no, I want to actually, I think it was Paul Ryan. I think I want to call out on this one. I think he said something about that. I remember it was one of the higher ups who said that very thing. It says, no, it's freedom of religion so long as it's freedom of a Christian religion, because you can have Catholic, you can have Baptist. It was one of these mental gymnastics geniuses, and I use that term very loosely, who came out with something. I wish I could remember who it was.
At this point, I don't know that it really much matters exactly who it was, because that sentiment is far too endemic right now of certain groups. Now, the big problem about this is, and this is where the whole intertwined snakes problem comes in, is that somehow, some way, the expression "in God we trust" became the national motto officially. The problem is the de facto, which had been accepted as "e pluribus unum," was never codified as being official.
I think it was Eisenhower put it on our money, and people have been using that as an excuse. Well, it's on our money. You don't have a problem spending money. It's like, I can melt gold down and make it look like something else, and it still spends like gold. So, yeah, what's your point?
You mean "In God We Trust"?
Yeah.
No, that one goes back to the late 1800s to start with, if I remember right, on coinage, and then later it got in on the
bills. I think it was in the early 60s or something like that, because of the so-called Red Menace. Because because the Soviet Union was seen as godless, and even if they weren't, like, even if they were all as religious as we were back then, godless was one of the best insults you could give somebody, because it went against the American paradigm of the time.
Yep, the commie pinko bastards, as we used to hear once upon a time.
I never heard the word pinko until I heard Sergeant Slaughter say it back in the WWF days.
"In God We Trust" is the official motto of the United States of America, Nicaragua, and the U.S. state of Florida. A law passed in a joint resolution by the 84th Congress and approved by President Dwight Eisenhower on July 30th, 1956, declared "In God We Trust" must appear on American currency.
Dwight, you dick.
Wait a second. He set it for the currency? For print currency?
As a mandate.
And made it the official for the country.
It was adopted as a replacement of or alternative to the unofficial motto of "E pluribus unum." So that was 1956.
So it would literally take an act of Congress to get this fixed.
Right.
Well, or to get it changed. And Congress isn't even going to look at that unless the public sentiment.
Now, here's the thing. There was a capitalized form of In God We Trust that first appeared on a 2-cent piece back in 1864.
Right.
But it has appeared on paper currency since 1957.
Okay, so I was off a bit.
So it was, you were right about the coins, some coins having them, but that it was mandated, it was declared to occur back in 1956.
Yeah.
Which puts it roughly 10 years after the end of World War II and the Berlin Wall and the whole East-West bloc Cold War starting.
Yeah, the Cold War was just, ironically, the Cold War was heating up.
Yeah, which is just great. If there's, as we know full well, as Joseph will say, nothing brings out the best in people than giving them a boogeyman that is supposed to be scaring them because they don't know any better to go and check it out, right?
I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny about that, the godless accusation, God or not, it's all about a central ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Communism is the religion.
Yeah.
So communism, when they kicked out the religion, they were basically kicking out the competition.
Yeah. And the trouble with that is...
And that's not even communism, by the way. I
think we've been down that rabbit hole a few times. We've talked about the fact that there is no one single socioeconomic model that will ever work to perfection, largely because of us.
Well, no, it's because of we have yet to test a system that hasn't been a corrupted experiment.
We need artificial intelligence to help with that end.
No, what you would need, if you wanted a perfectly controlled experiment, you would have to take a society and completely and utterly cut it off from the rest of the world and then impose whatever model you're wanting to try.
Yeah, it's when I'm talking in the past about a kind of an Ayn Rand situation where at the end of Atlas Shrugged, is basically they were living in a community in the middle of the mountain somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she never got around to describing how exactly everybody.
And the other thing too, I've seen these reality shows where I thought I saw a commercial for one when I was in the hospital about people all living on a commune, and the idea was they would be cut off from civilization, and they would all have to do their part to contribute to the greater good. Nobody really owned anything. Everything was equally distributed. But the trouble was, these people came from a previous culture. Even though they loved the idea, when things got hard, they went back to what they knew. So in order for something like this to work, you'd actually have to have a couple of 3 generations completely steeped in that culture for it to see whether or not it actually worked.
The term that I think that you probably would be looking for at this point for that, and we're going to pull it back from there because we're getting down into a different rabbit hole, is a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It's not something that can very easily be a gradual process. It needs to just be a cut, done, switched over, because otherwise it's just antithetical to what you're trying to accomplish.
I mean, if you're the way you live right now, if tomorrow it was turned upside down and suddenly you had to follow this God, or you had to now follow this ideology, you're going to be a little resistant to that change. In fact, I would say you're going to be very resistant to that change, because suddenly it goes against everything you spent the past 3 or 4 decades knowing as normal.
Yep.
And I had a thought about this whole, hearing what Tex said about In God We Trust and how it is basically now codified. That's going to make it a tough nut to crack. Because now, okay, the FFRF obviously is most likely going to step in on this one and start going constitutional. But because it's the official logo according to Eisenhower. I'm going to be realistic here, folks. I don't think this is a fight you're going to win.
So the problem with the motto "In God We Trust" is it references specific gods, Abrahamic religion.
Yes.
And the problem with the Abrahamic religion is it's very good at not just getting people to follow, it's getting them to feel like they're being targeted, that they're being belittled, that they're being attacked. Case in point, when they send out kids to go door to door to talk about Jesus, most people aren't going to be open to listening. They have things to do about their day. They might have something in the oven, depending on the time of day they go door to door. Now, this is coming from a guy who, first off, I was a born-again Christian for a while there. Number two, I also had to go door to door for when I was in college for a job. I was working for a phone company, and people knew to expect us if they had read their phone bill, which most people didn't, come to find out. Neither group, it didn't matter what I was selling. Neither group wanted me there. Most people didn't have the time of day to listen to me, regardless of what time of day it was. And so these kids, they go, in many cases adults too, to try to talk about Jesus and how they're going to save them from the devil and eternal torment. And nobody really wants to hear that shit when they got a baby crying in the background, or they've got, a cake in the oven or whatever. So they end up getting rejected, and it hits them because their religion is so dear to them. As we, if you really want to understand more about that, Dark Matter 2525 does an excellent video on God and self and everything else.
You know what? Anecdotally speaking, I wound up at one of these real God Hog churches one time. Friends of a friend were going to it, and they just had their first baby. And instead of it being baptized, it was going to be what they called presented. Because this particular church, it was not ordained by any diocese. Therefore, a baptism could not be performed, or at least officially recognized, or some crap like that. So we went to this thing, and okay, independent church away from the normal Catholics or Protestants. Okay, fine. I can get in touch with that because I've read some history and wasn't too impressed with what we already knew. And let me tell you, the vibe that I got in that place, these people had not just drunk the Kool-Aid. These guys had mainlined it and were probably shooting enemas while we were sitting there.
Well, like I said, I was actually I was a born-again Christian. I was part of a group called Young Life that targets and indoctrinates kids while they're in high school.
Yeah, so you've seen these people that, like you said, they hand over the heart is like, oh, well, my God is under attack. I've seen people like that, and I just look at that and go, like, this is some MK Ultra reprogramming shit, man. I'm telling you.
It is, because what happens is after you go door to door and you get rejected, you feel your despair, your frustration, resentment, and a lot of other negative feelings. Your brain is doing all these wonderful chemicals that make you feel like crap, and you go back to your church, and or whatever, your congregation, and they welcome you with open arms. They don't judge you. They say, you did your best. We love you. You are one of us. And see, we told you you're going to get beat up and people are going to reject you. And they're going to
fault. It's not yours.
And so what ends up happening is now they get all this positive feeling and this welcoming, and they're more in love with what's going on now, and they feel welcome and they know the truth. And because I went through the same damn shit, and it really gets you. They got this stuff really nailed down. I found the link, by the way, for the dark matter reference. It's called The Real God and Epiphany. In case somebody doesn't want to look for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't just apply to religion. It applies to anything that a person is truly adamant about. If you ask somebody who is really, really, really adamant about Star Trek, they live, eat, and sleep Star Trek, and you insult Star Trek, they'll react the same way as if you went up to a Christian and said, I don't believe in Jesus.
Okay.
Not to the same degree, though.
And this is why it's so important not to put this shit in schools, because most kids, even at the high school level, in my personal experience, haven't really been taught how to think for themselves yet. So if you're putting in religious indoctrination material, even if it's just a phrase, in God we trust, it's a beginning. It's the same kind of beginning we had in the war when they first came for the socialists. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't a socialist.
And I know I can actually speak again from experience because I'm old enough about school. And I remember distinctly my grade 5 class. We had a Jehovah's Witness in the class. Every morning, again, Canadian perspective here, but every morning we would stand for the national anthem. It would be played on the PA system throughout the school.
Same for me.
Yeah,
in New York.
Yeah, the token JW would actually go out in the hall. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know anything about it at the time. Then we would do the Lord's Prayer. And then one of the other teachers would actually read from the Bible. And the thing is, I shrugged it off completely. It's like, okay, so they're reading the Bible. Now, years later, realizing just exactly how shitty that was, what they were doing, it was like, I honestly, if that teacher wasn't dead already, I'd like to go back and have a few words with her about what she thought she was doing. However, to be fair, I lived in a small town, and I actually got into an argument with somebody or a discussion, if you will, on Facebook with somebody about this, asking, when was the first time you had a teacher who was a person of color? And I'm like, okay. And I told them flat out, I said, wasn't until I got to university. And they were about to say something. I held up my hand. I said, no. To put some context around it, I grew up in a small town in northern Canada. There was not a whole lot of diversity in that town. So if you play law of averages, almost everybody there, when I was growing up, everybody there was a Christian, and most people were white. I'm not saying all, and as a matter of fact, there were others, there were people of color in the class, some people from the Philippines, several natives, and I honestly really didn't give a shit because we were all there for the same thing. We were there to learn. So I can understand how in a small town you could get away with throwing a Bible verse up or doing the Lord's Prayer, because there's a good chance that everybody in the town is at the very least close to being equal, if not equal in terms of faith and other things. Now, that was admittedly 40 plus years ago. Things have changed.
Fortunately.
Yeah. And I want to throw a hypothesis out there. I even said hypothesis. How about that?
Okay. And quickly, because there's a piece that I want to get to also.
Yeah. But, and again, it kind of rolls into this. So why put the In God We Trust back now? Because I think the elders that are pushing for this have thought that, well, back when we had it, things were good. We were a good school. We turned out good students. So if we bring it back, we'll get that spark back. And I can't help but wonder if that's part of the thought.
I think it's more to do, if you're talking about the elders, it has more to do with the control, the power they once had than anything.
Well,
the followers, maybe the nostalgia is maybe for the followers when, they're thinking to their childhood.
But these elders were followers back when it was the thing to do.
That's the hardest thing to do, is to determine, because leaders, you've got sheepdogs and you've got the shepherds.
Yeah.
The people who are actually doing the thinking. And then you've got let's call them extremely trained believers, and they've become enforcers of the rule instead of followers of the rule.
Yeah. Let's kind of drop into this a second. I mean, we can go back and forth very easily about the fact that it says God and it's being put in public schools being a big time no, because First Amendment, you're not supposed to be taking a stand on this. Okay, whatever. We know that this has been a contentious thing for, well, easy 50 years at this point. Easy. So here's the thing. I told the chat that I'm going to drop a word out here for everybody and I want to see what you guys think about it overall. And the guys over there in the chat, especially. What they're doing, putting these words up in, I forget what the exact wording was, but it was, you know what? Hold on a second. Let me pull up I've got the article in a tab over here. It says that it needs to be, here we go. According to the NPR article, it says, quote, a new state law that took effect this month requires the message to be displayed. Reminding you, requires the message to be displayed in an area where students are, quote, most likely, unquote, to see it, such as a cafeteria or entryway. Here's the word that I want to drop at everybody and get the reactions from, and especially you guys over in the chat. One word: propaganda. Tell me this doesn't smell like the caricature of the Eastern Bloc Cold War post-World War II, where Big Brother is watching you. The fatherland is everything. You get the idea.
Mm-hmm. A totalitarian, authoritarian state with the church as the authority.
We'll tell you how to live.
Yeah, it's a theocracy. It's a totalitarian theocracy that they want.
It's funny because, if you're deciding for somebody else, how they're going to live, it doesn't matter whether you use, the mascot hardly matters, whether it be the little red book or the God or whatever. That's just the kind of hook that it's basically a hook.
Oh, what was it? What was that movie? Priest. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. A bit of a low budget B grade movie. I think it was based on an anime, but there was one city left. The rest of the world had been laid waste by centuries of war against vampires. And it was controlled by, basically, it was their version of the Vatican. And the way they always said it, and you're hitting the note here, Joseph, to go against the church is to go against God.
Yeah, but they're
no,
that's I totally get what you're saying, but it's maddening. What them saying that, for me personally, is maddening on so many levels, because they're not only, it's not only disingenuous, it's also a total lack of accountability. Because they're the ones making the rules, but they're just offloading the responsibility for that
to like some excuse.
Yeah, so like they're, they want all the benefits of total control without any of the responsibilities, accountability, anything like that.
Yeah,
I can do whatever the fuck I want because my imaginary friend says I can.
Yeah, and Stephanie puts up a good point in the chat. The joke being that information cannot be controlled now. and they want to indoctrinate the kids when they're adolescent and have access to the internet. You know, the thing is, we've seen these people with, you know, that do the mental gymnastics or have the complete mental break when they see something that contradicts what they know. And the thing is, as Seth Andrews once said, you know, the whole get them while they're young. Because if you wire them early enough, they can actually be insulated against anything that's out there on the net. You know, you could put a bald-faced fact in front of them, like something that is as elementary as, if you get pushed, you will fall down, and they will scream fake news.
Because they've offloaded. That's also without going into a diatribe, but they've offloaded the responsibility of their own survival onto somebody else.
Yeah.
It's the other person who decides for me. I don't want to think about what's good or bad or whatever, or what's real or fake. They're following a survival model. I think,
but you know, we've talked about how,
and I'm always going back to survival.
No,
you're right. I'm using that word a lot because, like, I've followed this rabbit hole all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Freud was cute thinking about we're motivated by our sexuality, but I mean, our motivation for everything we do, every decision we make, is survival. Now, if you take someone who decides for themselves what's good or bad, makes that value judgment themselves, you know, how they look at life and how they look at their environment, and, you know, what to take from it, what to give to it, whatever, what's damaging to it, what's not damaging to it. And then you've got somebody who hasn't got a fucking clue, who's never really taken the responsibility of doing that. And instead they defer to X book, X doctrine, and all that. It turns life into just a series of life-like thought. It turns it into pattern matching.
Yeah.
Same or not. Is it the same as the doctrine? If it's not the same as the doctrine, bad.
Yeah.
If it's same, good. And that's it. Yeah. So, like, if this evidence that they have, like, right in front of them does not correspond to whatever, you know, they were told to think, or whatever doctrine they've been giving, then it's just, it doesn't exist. I mean, it's just like, there's just, like you say, there's a block in the brain. It just, no, bad. That's it. And thought stops there.
Yeah. Trippin', I will get over to that. Right now, I'm using a different tab, so I will check out the Twitter link in a moment. But there was something that I wanted to kind of drop in on this, because I had sort of remembered the quote, and I couldn't quite remember who it was that had said it. And I went looking it up, and let me tell you, Wikiquote is really, really helpful sometimes, let me tell you. So the quote that I was looking for was, "Give me the child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man."
Oh, yeah.
That is exactly what propaganda is supposed to do. Now, the reason why I say that Wikiquote is really great is we had always assumed, it always, quote unquote, here on the show, that it was attributed to Ignatius Loyola. Apparently, this is disputed. And this is what Wikiquote is telling me, that apparently this may have been attributed, quote, attributed to him, perhaps mischievously, by Voltaire. So take that one with a grain of salt as far as to where it comes from. However, the concept of the quote is far too accurate. Give me the child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man. Is that not exactly what propaganda is intended to do in order to twist and change the mores of the new generations coming up, so that whatever it is that you've put into place, however heinous, is simply viewed as just the normal day-to-day normalcy. It's just the standard operating procedure. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But I think the most important part in any indoctrination is, and I'm not so sure in that quote if it was the first 7 years. I think it was from 7 years. Give me the boy and I'll give you give me the boy and I'll give you back the man, or something like that. But the most important part of any propaganda, indoctrination is impeding the transition to autonomous thought. That's it. So, there's a certain point in our lives where we're expected to, quote unquote, grow up, and we become accountable for like all our own actions and all our own decisions and all that. We basically learn to survive on our own. And there's a certain age that happens. And, I've talked about this many times before. But the biggest part of indoctrination is just stopping that transition. So, no, you would like to ask questions about this. You would like to, know more about this thing, this other thing. But no, you're going to listen to us instead.
Yeah, but they do it in such a way that they tell you that, look, we know you have these questions, but if you go down that road, your life will be hard. Your soul will be corrupted.
Well, all sorts of fear. But if you scare somebody, if you like it, you tell a little child, there's a closed room and the door is closed, and you tell the child, don't you fucking dare go in that room. There's this evil, horrible monster is going to get you.
Yeah, and how well did that work in Genesis?
Well, and you see, that's kind of the thing.
There was a smaller pool of humans at that point, though.
Yeah,
but they were still children.
That's the irony, because the evil apple is actually autonomous thought.
It was the door.
The wisdom is the ability to think for yourself, basically.
Yep, and that's, you guys remember, that's the one that I kind of hung my hat on a while ago. I still love that particular item. I should trot that one out again someday.
And it said in all letters.
For Lucifer, I mean, he was trying to set us free from oppression and being imprisoned in our own minds and this garden.
And the body count.
There's definitely the body count. God's pissed.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Doc, you take care of yourself. Rest well.
Yeah, maybe we'll see you tomorrow, Doc.
But the idea of trying to I'm trying to figure the right. Okay, the only way that I can word. I was trying to find a way of really describing this. The only way that I can think of at the moment is trying to herd the group in order to guide them to where you want them to go. There is a complete functional difference in what's happening here with what is effectively propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk tonight, I really can. It's not the beer talking at all. Versus what more cerebral concepts would say that you're supposed to do. For instance, the more cerebral would say, teach someone how to learn. The propagandists are the ones that say, we want you to learn this. And there's a complete functional difference in these two concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And one turns out people who can, as Josephus very want to say, who can think for themselves, who can learn how to provide for themselves, who can continue to learn because they not only want to learn, they have a drive to continue to learn. And ultimately, that is for the benefit of not just them, but humanity as a species and the world as a populace.
And it's funny how the people wanting to decide for others, you know, the rules they give are almost always beneficial, mostly to themselves. Like at any given point in time in humanity, you know, you've got a group of experienced humans, and you've got a group of less experienced humans that are at a disadvantage, whether it be a difference in, you know, in culture, in education, or whatever. But we can take it back to the most basic example: adults and children. So
you know what?
The people directing things, they have a choice between, like you say, educating, or they could just totally exploit the fuck out of the situation.
And basically, like, make little robots. I just realized something. How am I being completely wrong or malicious in saying that the vast majority of these people who are trying to use this indoctrination and this propaganda in order to make little itty bitty robot people, they're old, decrepit cuckolds who, in a fair fight for the minds and the hearts of the populace, can't win in a fair fight.
No.
And know it.
And
welcome to the appeal of emotion.
Well, it's not. Whoa! That's distracting because Shujin's point. But that's the hook. But the principle is what Shujin just said.
Yeah,
is because these people these quote unquote rule makers, you know, if you look at their actual functional role in society, most of them are just worthless. I mean, to the rest of society. I mean, if they were to have to go and
some
get
of them
a job by themselves,
not all of them are worthless. Some of them are dentists.
Yeah, and some of them could be Solient Green. I mean, there is a possibility of there being good
I'm exempting. I'm making. I'm setting specifically the leaders here, not the followers.
He's talking about the politicians, and I'm sorry. I don't care if you. I don't care.
The rule makers.
No, it's not the rule makers. It's the puppet masters. Because they're the ones setting the stage. They're the ones pulling the strings to make the stage exactly the way that they want it to be, where nobody is allowed to look elsewhere. Because once they do, they get to look who's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider that they get to keep changing the rules. And if you're changing the rules, then there are no rules.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned with that, and this could be the alcohol talking for a second, but I don't care. And I know I didn't put us as not safe for work. I don't care. In this particular case, fuck those guys. Yeah, seriously, if you want to keep moving the fucking goalpost, fuck you and fuck everything that you're standing for when you're trying to do.
That's why there's 4 conflicting gospels. Because you know, the Bible was never meant to be read. So like, if every time you go to church you hear the same story, but hey, it's a bit different. It's like, keep people in ambiguity, keep them guessing, you know, so that they don't know what the rules are. So they're always going to be returning to you to know whether they're quote unquote doing it right.
That's why it was illegal for a while to own a Bible.
Yeah. How well conditioned are these people that when these rule makers, puppet masters, whatever the hell you want to call them, the second you go to call those people out, they invoke God.
Or worse. Or worse, that you are going after them in an unfair manner when you're calling them out for being unfair themselves.
Whatever.
Just answer the fucking question and prove me wrong then. But then I'll be in the bad.
Yeah, but the second they invoke God,
they've given up.
The sheeple run to their defense as a conditioned response. Wait, this is what we face. They may be decrepit old, you know, people that, you know, when they fart dust or whatever. But
God, the fatherland.
Yeah, all they have to do is invoke a couple of these things that have been drilled into these kids from practically the day they were born. It's a triggered response. The second they say, "Oh, I'm under attack, therefore God's under attack," because, you know, me and God are buddy. I got Jesus on my Rolodex.
And that's exactly the problem with the whole "in God we trust." The second you go after that, they say, "Oh, they're attacking our religion," which, again, that mentality, that response goes back to, like I was talking about, door to door. Okay,
they're attacking our very concept of survival. You're bringing into question their entire survival model.
Yeah, but they're not seeing it as a survival model. I understand where you're coming from with it.
No.
Wait,
but they don't finish. Joseph, everybody here on this panel understands what you're saying when it comes to a survival model, and I'm willing to bet that a lot of people in YouTube do understand as well. But when you're talking to the ones out there who are the Godheads, as I used to call them, the ones who are the Jesus freaks and such, and you say, look, you need to change your survival model, they're going to look at you like you have just grown a pair of horns and a red nose and look like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
If I could clarify, sure. Because I'm fully aware of what you're saying. Right. And I'm actually, it's like, I've spent a long time following the rabbit hole as far as I can. And this comes to another point I bring up often, probably, is that 90% of what we do, we have no idea why we do it. So, okay, if you're going to try to reason with them with this survival model thing, of course it's not going to work. But I'm saying, behaviorally, instinctively, that's what's going on in the brain. It's basically when you offend when you offend, quote unquote, the religion, you're going to get a panic response. You're going to get a survival response. Yeah, it's like a cornered animal. It's all the same behavior patterns.
And it's not just a survival response. There's more to it.
They may not even realize it themselves. Like, for example, if you're listening to the Atheist Experience, and as often, Matt Dillahunty is he's saying something that the caller does not like. The caller will, almost without fail, constantly try to interrupt him, just to stop him from saying whatever he's saying. It's this fear response. And they may not even realize it themselves. Why am I trying to interrupt this guy? They're not going to reason with themselves to get that answer. They're just not doing it.
And that's not just a survival thing there either. They also feel like they're personally being rejected, but they're not acknowledging that they're personally being rejected. Because that same feeling that you get when somebody rejects you, like if you're going out if you find person A attractive and you want to ask that person out and you go and ask that person out and they say no, you get a feeling of rejection. And that's the same feeling that it comes from the same part of the brain that when somebody says, hey, would you like to hear about Jesus? And you say no, that person feels too. The only difference is all these religious organizations have many, 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 many years of experience of twisting that to make it,
they weaponize it.
They weaponize the hell out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not just survival; it's also rejection of who they are.
A great answer to do you know about Jesus? A great answer to that is yes. What would you like to know?
Yeah, that would be great. Now, Felix has gone ahead and put something, and I'm bringing this in even though I think this has kind of already been covered. But it said, given a contentious diet of information, you want to be, quote, the truth. Reward a given train of thought to some who is still too young to question the philosophy.
Can you back
Sorry,
up there?
the word that you used is not the right one. So forgive me, I'm going to edit just a little bit. To question the philosophy, and you get a group of right or wrong will go to the grave for that ideology, which is pretty much the same thing. Teach them that this is what's normal, and they will continue to believe that up until they die because they simply can't accept it.
Pattern matching.
Yes, but
that's
also why followers, they want absolute they want to hear expressions of absolute certitude in their leaders, because that's who they depend on for survival. And any sign of incertitude with them is a weakness.
And I think that's why when you actually get one of these so-called religious leaders, or even a politician, when you get them down to the point where they're practically mumbling, to quote No Illusions, well, Jesus, 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 Jesus. They're trying as hard as they can to save as much face as possible because of that whole kind of blood in the water sentiment.
Okay, hold that thought, because to follow up, Trippin had also just put a couple of minutes ago, the want to live back in the past. The World Wide Web is emptying the pews. Like they say, knowledge is power. Control the knowledge, control the masses. Yep. And that kind of goes back to what Tech had said earlier. Once upon a time, it was illegal to own a Bible, and I kind of clarify that a little bit further, in your native language. That's
at one point
where
it
the
was
difference
illegal.
was.
It was illegal. And I would love to go back to the Middle Ages. It's a big question for me.
Dude, they would kill you in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, in the Middle Ages, I would really like to know, and it's a question I still have today, was illiteracy imposed then?
That is an interesting question, actually.
That is.
I wonder.
There are some community, look at what's going on in Islam. It's forbidden for women to learn in some communities. Sorry, Tech, I cut you off.
No, you make an excellent point. It was also probably a multi-part process where everything was compounding on each other. For example, when you live in a time where there's no medical science, women are dying at the ripe old age of childbirth. If you don't have 4 or 5 kids, your family's probably not going to make it through the winter with the farm and all that other crap. And when do you have time to sit down and read? Because you're working from sun up to sundown, and when the sun's down, you're prepping stuff for tomorrow, and then you're going to bed because you're drop dead tired.
There's also the need, because at the time in medieval times, when especially after the fall of Rome,
you might not have the need because there's nothing to read there.
Nobody saw outside. People would spend their entire lifetime in their village. They would never see outside their village.
And there was a time where books were only held by rich people before the printing press.
Oh yeah. There's tons of like you said, there's tons of reasons.
Yeah. So everything kind of compounds on itself. And if you look at human progression as an overall in that area of the world, and then see how the progress that humanity was making in that section of the world, and then when the Dark Ages hit, all progression stopped on scientific and philosophical fronts and so on and so forth.
Reversed, even.
It didn't just stop. It went down.
Guys, this actually triggered something that I remembered.
We triggered him, Joe. Yeah.
No, not quite that bad, but no. In university, I had to take an ancient medieval history course, and by the way, I loved it. But part of what we talked about was Constantine, because really a lot of this was his fault.
No! But it wasn't him. It was after. Constantine was only the first Christian.
Well,
it was.
Let me finish.
Sorry. Yeah.
In any event, there was something I recall. I was looking for things for a reference to this, but it kind of goes to the illiteracy thing. Of course, there were a lot of people that didn't understand the language of the burgeoning now Holy Roman Empire, and so icons were made, pictographs, objects, ways to convey ways to convey the Christian religion in non-verbal ways so that people could understand it. And then, as I recall, I think it was after Constantine died, there was some kind of reformation where all of these icons had to be destroyed.
But that wasn't that paganism?
I don't know. I believe they were using something Well, they were kind of using the pagan approach, but to promote Christianity at the time. And again, I'm going back 30 years here, so please bear with me. But as I recall, there was I want to say the iconoclasm, but I probably got that wrong. But a lot of these Christian artifacts and icons were destroyed by the church. And
are you talking about the first schism between
maybe
the Orthodox and the
possibly. Again, like I said, this is a long time ago that I learned this, but it makes me wonder if that was done so that the church as an institution would have sole control over the narrative. Like
but it's a powerful tool, granted, no matter how you put it.
It is. But having that power to say that, no, look, this is your God, and if you have any questions about it, you come to me because I speak for God. And then, this religious icon or this book that I'm quoting from, only I know how to read it.
Imagine again, take that analogy and then transpose it to, for example, you've got some people living in the middle of a forest, in a clearing in the middle of a forest, and you've got the village leader saying, you do not go into the forest. I will tell you what's good or bad or dangerous. You do not do this without me, if you do it at all.
Wasn't it the plot of an M. Night Shyamalan movie? But I see where you're coming from. I totally see where you're coming from on that one, though. No, it comes
back to the. I'm sorry for repeating myself, but it always comes back to the same behavior pattern. You've got the leaders imposing quote unquote worldview on followers, and I call it worldview, by the way. When I hear worldview, I think survival guide. But anyways, people's concept of reality. So you're not going to decide for yourself what reality is or not. We will decide for you.
Mm-hmm.
And therein, you'll also find the rejection of evidence, even when it's presented to them. Because, I mean, to people who decide nothing for themselves, reality itself is a concept. It's not.
It's according to Robin Williams, what a concept.
Well, it's, and I think a lot of it, that's where the whole, we live in the Matrix BS comes from.
Well, yeah, but it basically comes down to human comfort, because like people go through life and they go, okay, if I follow X behavior pattern, I will get rewarded. And if I follow Y behavior pattern, I'll get punished, or I will feel bad, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got all around that, you've got this second onion skin of, conditioning, where you keep people within a close-knit community where the patterns are always the same. So like the example that Tech gave earlier, the door-to-door rejection, you go into the outside world and you try X behavior in Y environment and it doesn't work. Well, come back to X environment, then everything will be all right again.
You know what? Hold that thought 1 second. I know that we've kind of gone around a couple of different ways on this, and we got about a half an hour, and I still want to get to a different piece of this all. I want to kind of challenge the folks who are listening at this point to really think about this for a couple of seconds and realize how insidious this whole, you will think that this is normal no matter how heinous an idea it would be. We're not going to go to the slavery thing. We're not going to go to having guns and how many people are being shot and shit. We're not even going to go to any of that. Think about this concept for a second. Male circumcision. It was, for decades, just a normal course of events when a new male is born. Didn't even consider it. Didn't even think about it. Nobody thought about it in the terms of, well, why would I not want to do this? I mean, that's what you do, right? In the secular community, that's the way that it had been for decades. In the Jewish community, even to this day, it's still considered a normal to do this. Hold on.
Yeah.
To do
we're not
this,
getting into details.
No. To do this in a ritualized style publicly after 7 days after birth, I think it is.
And with no doctor present.
In a in a manner that under any other circumstance would be considered sexual battery of a minor, to put it nicely.
Genital mutilation, sexual battery of a minor, and potential biological assault, depending on whether or not there is an infection on the moil, if the moil has an infection, because there are babies who have wound up with hepatitis from the act.
Or worse, end up dead from not just that, but from things like syphilis. And that is something, to the best of my recollection, can actually have it be genetically tested, identified, and traced to the individual who had it and transmitted it over. Yeah, Dalan.
I was going to say, to say nothing of the herpes.
That too.
I believe that was one of the big ones just recently.
There's nothing like giving your newborn child herpes. I mean, what greater gift can you possibly imagine besides that and polio?
Yeah, well, look at it this way. I mean, syphilis, it's what was good enough for some gangster in the 30s that they could only get on tax evasion. I'm thinking of somebody in particular. I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea who you're talking about, obviously.
Not
it definitely wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you. You weren't at right. You weren't at.
I wasn't born yet.
Shit. Who the hell? Where? There was not Rikers. Where the hell am I thinking of?
Sing Sing?
No. The Rock.
Alcatraz.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing good. Couldn't remember. Well, the last time that I thought about that was when I saw the Mythbusters thing when they were trying to get off of Alcatraz, and that goes back a good 3 years. The last time I checked that out, anyway.
Yeah.
Something that we talked about in
Capone.
terms of
thank you, Trippin.
Wait, you weren't being sarcastic?
No, I'm quite serious. Al Capone died.
No, I know that, but I can't believe you blanked on that name. I would have said something, but honestly, it sounded like you were just trolling.
No, I honestly truly couldn't remember the goddamn name.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
No worries. See, never think that I'm being dumb by choice when I could be stupid because I'm just I don't know. It's late anyway. Go, Tech, finish.
We're talking about why this is a bad idea, and part of the bad idea is the schooling that's going on in American country, or the country of the United States of America for those who are outside, and
which is my pet complaint.
Or should I say nation? Our nation. Anyway, the complaint is legitimate. When we have lack of education, right now I'm just suffering from a severe lack of sleep. But when we have a severe lack of education, our children don't grow up knowing better. They don't know their rights when it comes to dealing with the police. They don't know their rights when they go to court. They don't know their rights when they're buying products in a store, because different states have different rights. These are things that people need to be aware of. They don't know their rights with regards to religion. Now, if religion had its way, your only right you would have is to believe in it, no other, and do exactly as they tell you, and that's it, end of story. But we do live in a secular country. We live in a country where it's your right to choose your religion if you so choose to. You have the right to choose no religion if you choose to do so. You have the right to not say a word to the police should you choose not to. You have the right to an attorney if you're being charged with a criminal offense. You have the right to look at the facts of the product that you're buying written on the side of the box. But without education, people forget these things. Without proper education, it is easier to turn to somebody and go, "Why are you reading the side of the box of that cereal for? It says it's healthy right there on the front. You don't need to read the ingredients."
I'd like to replace, what you just said, I'd like to replace education with accountability and responsibility.
That works too. That's all part of the educational program.
Yeah. Well, because even no matter how much you know, it doesn't matter how much you know, but as soon as you...
That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. What I meant was part of the education...
Hold it. Let him finish. We did it for you.
Okay.
Joseph, finish.
Yeah, just before you even make the decision of educating yourself, or you have to decide to allow yourself to be educated. I mean, the accountability becomes before everything else, I think, because I could be in a new environment, not know anything about it, but instead of running straight for the information desk, I might want to decide for myself, to have a look around myself and see how things are. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at a
learn about the
child's
environment.
age,
Yeah, but that's just it.
No.
And now we're going back to this transition that I'm talking about between, like, quote unquote, growing up. That's not happening. I'm done. Sorry.
Well, okay, hold on, Tech, because I think I think I might have a sideline to kind of go along with where part of what you're talking about. Part of the problem that we end up with is the ignorance quotient. How do you know that you don't know enough to make a proper judgment on something? It's an impossibility. So the problem becomes the accountability is on the shoulders of those that are supposed to be imparting the knowledge on how to evaluate and how to instill knowing that you need to learn more. And that's a real tough concept, because I forget who it was that said it. It could have been Plato, I think, that would say, or it could have been Aristotle, I forget who the hell it was, who basically said, there are no bad students, only bad teachers. The concept being, your job as a teacher is to inspire the minds that have been entrusted with you so that they will want to continue to learn.
It's
and
funny
that's something that many don't want to do these days because
Mr.
of red tape, amongst others.
Well, they want to be authorities. But it's really funny that the teachers in my life, anyways, the people I've most respected and most trusted are the teachers who say, they impart to the best of my knowledge. They present, their own experience as their experience, as their experiments, as their, whatever they've accumulated through life, and they present it. They present it with their own limitations, like going back to what you just said, we can't know what we don't know. And the people I'm most mistrusted are the teachers who give quote unquote lessons as absolute truths or absolutes.
Yep. The only time where you can say something is an absolute is when you're dealing with time.
Or vodka.
Anything after that is subjective to various variables.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just said it that way.
But that's goes life. I mean, like, I don't know is, for people who reason, it's it's not only a perfectly acceptable answer, it's also an invitation to know. Well, whereas a follower, it's a trigger.
And here's where it can go really wrong. I've been through the university and college circuit, if you will. And you look at grade school and high school, and a lot of what they teach you is by rote. Your mathematics, you learn your concepts, be it algebra, chemistry, or calculus, trigonometry, whatever. There's a set way of doing things. You're presented with this problem, solve this equation, find this variable. Then you're given a word problem, and then maybe you have to construct the math. You have to construct the equation to solve the problem. And my grade 12 math teacher, God curse him, he was good at throwing a few curveballs at you. But cut to college, where now, of course, I took the IT track, computer science and everything. I didn't learn per se a particular language of code. I didn't learn a particular platform of database management. I didn't learn a particular way of a particular program to design table diagrams and how they relate to a certain database. Yes, I did learn a platform, but it was only to practice the concept that I was taught. The idea of a relational database system, for instance.
And once you've got that, you speak all languages.
Bingo.
Yeah.
See, and the ultimate test of this was we were given, this was in my client server class. Yes, I actually had a course called client server. Yeah, Gerald.
Can I make a side note? You know,
yeah.
It's about a side note, because if you did learn in university, by the time you got out of university, whatever you learned was most likely already obsolete.
Exactly. You know, and this is what I'm getting to. So I was in one of my lab classes, I was given a problem. Create a database create a database model that does this. And we were given explicit instructions on what it was supposed to do. We were then told to do it on 10 platforms, and we were given 12 to choose from. And it was everything from Visual Basic to Paradox to FoxPro to Power Builder, and a couple of 3 others that I honestly can't remember at the time. SQL Server was not one of them because that was still in extreme beta at the time. Yes, I'm old.
I can well imagine that DBase was probably one of those that was in there somewhere.
You know what? I think it was, actually.
Yeah, at that point, it might have been Ashton Tate, too. I'm sorry. Am I showing my age, too?
Just there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I used to sell that Fortran?
No, thankfully we had advanced a little bit past Fortran at that point. Thank God.
I still speak COBOL.
Well, let's face
it. My condolences.
COBOL was a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but anyways,
yeah,
to my point. If these schools with the In God We Trust are going to start, you know, everything's going to be by rote, and there's not going to be any hint of, here's a problem, I need you to solve it, but you might not have the same tools today, or you might not have the same tools then that you have now, or you go to work for company X and company X doesn't have what you were taught to do to solve that problem. If you're not ready for that piece of thinking on your feet, then, well, what happens? You know, you become a high school grad from one of these In God We Trust schools, and the only thing you're good for is what, working at Uncle Jeb's hardware store till you retire, like he did. Like it's like you said, it's survival of that society. It's the continuation of this microcosm. They're trying to ensure that.
It's also self-contradictory because people who don't think for themselves, well, you know, why do most programmers, basically end up being antisocial, living in caves?
Because that's the most efficient way for them to concentrate.
I live in a condo, thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's kind of a cave.
Well, yeah.
It's got one. Okay, it's got theoretically, 2 exits. One will get you out in the hallway. The other one will probably get you dead when you hit the ground.
What, your computer chair? It's not an eject seat.
I didn't have enough money for that particular model.
Okay, well, maybe next year.
Yeah,
but you see my point.
That'll be my next bonus.
That's my upgrade. Yeah, start a Kickstarter.
You've heard of the bug out bag? I've got the bug out chair, folks.
Yeah, too bad about my 3 stories of neighbors above me. But
you see, I got 2 below me, so you can see my problem.
Okay, going back to what you were saying, it's funny because I thought about this a while, because, you know, when I think back to my childhood and my education, basically you've got, you know, society is set up in a way, like Tech said, it's programmed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got a choice. You're giving people a certain set of tools, and that's what education is. But education these days, like you said, it's by rote. It not only gives you the tools, it tells you how to use them. And all this is, I should backtrack a bit. You've got a programmed society. It's functioning in a certain way along X patterns. You can either go with the flow, or you can use the available tools to do your own thing. Now, when 90% of society is go with the flow, you're gonna learn X and X tool, so you can survive in X quote unquote outside world, like to work for X boss in an X way, who needs X things. Now you follow the pattern, and that's basically what education's doing these days, is just basically giving people the means to survive within a given predictable environment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I will say one thing though. I don't want to completely discount things being done by rote, provided that it's under the assumption that you're learning the basics. Like, 1 + 1 is 2. That's by rote. Unless you're Common Core, then it's an acid trip. But that's another story entirely.
Okay, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, because that's a whole other thing.
It is.
You need 1 + okay.
But anyways,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is that some of the things by rote are some of the basic foundational things upon which you should be able to build at a later date. So that, if I'm doing something that is, completely unrelated to what I did in school for math, but I suddenly recognize, like I zero in on a problem and I realize, wait a minute, this is a ratio. I can, write this out and I can come up with, what is X? So having learned the thing by rote is fine, but also realizing that I can then apply it to a real world example moving forward, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, and
that's the best way to learn, actually.
Yeah. But we talk about, how we stand on the shoulders of those who came before. Well, okay, scientists do. I don't stand on anybody's shoulders because I'd hurt them. They got so far with the mathematics they knew at the time. The next generation comes along. They have the foundation, the by rote stuff that, say Einstein put together. And then they expanded on, because in the intervening times, there's been new concepts, new ways of thinking, ways that were invented based on the foundation. You see where I'm coming from with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, I would not totally discount by rote, but I would not use it as the only.
Right. Yeah. I think
I take that
very quickly, because I've got something that we really have to finish off with.
Yeah.
Okay. But basically it comes to, if I could take this way down the rabbit hole, but I mean,
very quickly.
Basically, you've got a closed circuit, and by rote is a closed circuit in the brain, which means it's a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But actually using it is really integrating it with the rest of your brain functions, like, for example, mathematics and all that.
Yeah.
It's anything useful, any useful tool we learn, we integrate it with the rest of our processes. It becomes a part of us, basically.
Yeah.
There is no. It's like there were programs in the 1950s when they were teaching children. They would play something during the night while a child was sleeping. For example, the history of Egypt. And when the kid woke up in the morning, they'd ask him at breakfast, okay, what do you know about Egypt? And they would, like, total blank. But if the parent began reading the exact text that they were played back during the night, the kid could continue by rote the lesson.
Yeah.
Does that?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about education is to get you that closed circuit, but then to show you by example how it can be integrated into the rest of your mental circuitry.
And like you said, you don't understand this yourself, and you don't become responsible for it yourself, and it doesn't become a part of you until you're confronted with a real life situation, a real world situation.
Yeah. Really quickly, first off, as far as to doing something by rote, I just want to go on record as saying that I don't have a problem with doing stuff by rote if it is the lowest level concept stuff. Because when you start getting into high concept stuff and it's by rote, to me that gets really close onto the whole brainwashing mentality. You will know these facts this way because we are going to tell you over and over again whether it's true or not. As an example, the War of Northern Aggression. That's my example on that. Now, the link that Trippin had sent earlier is where I'm going to kind of finish you guys off with. The story is highly disturbing, and it comes to us from NBC News. There was a ranch that 27 children had specifically been removed from what was a private youth treatment program, which was called the Ranch for Kids School in Rexford,
Lincoln
Montana.
County. Yeah.
Okay, now, this was a religiously operated group with individuals who had, let's just go ahead and say, they were not exactly accredited.
You could have stopped at religious operations, because if you look at any religious daycare, they tend to get past all the accreditations and shit.
True enough, but there's
Jesus camp.
Don't.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
We'll do with that one another time. However, a couple of the very specific items in this article, and it will be in the show notes for people to take a look at. How they treated some of the kids was, to put it mildly, abuse. And I want to get your, you guys, I want to get your reactions to this. Quote, the health department said tips and reports of, quote, egregious abuse, unquote, at the ranch had been rising, quote, in both frequency and severity in recent months, unquote, including allegations that, and reminding you, these are allegations. As far as to, has anything been proved at this point? We have to give the benefit of the doubt, but there's always the idea that, where there's some smoke and more smoke, here are the items in the bullet list. Children were hit, kicked, body slammed, and spit on by staff members. Staff members inflicted, quote, persistent psychological abuse, unquote, on children, including prolonged isolation. Children were forced to go on 15 to 20 mile, quote, disciplinary walks on remote Forest Service roads in harsh conditions. Food was withheld from children. A nail gun was shot at a child.
That might have been a misfire.
The fact is, it happened in the first place.
Yes.
Now, here's where I want to finish with, because we've only got a couple of minutes left over. I want from you guys. 2 of us don't have children. 2 of us do. So our perspective is going to be very different between the 2 camps on that angle. However, we have all been kids. We have all been in educational environments. Considering this was supposed to have been an extra, a camp of sorts for, by the way, I should also mention specifically for adopted children.
And not only adopted children, but many of the kids apparently had disorders as well.
So
you can add on special needs onto that list.
So to that end, to that end, as our closing, I would love to get from you guys individually what your reaction is, knowing that stuff like this does happen in places. Maybe not necessarily here, because we have to give the benefit of the doubt, but we have heard similar situations, for instance, not just in this group, but over in New York City, where we have to deal also with Pastor Manning's group having very similar allegations being thrown their way. And the deciding factor that pulls it all together seems to be religious indoctrination and conformism trying to be forced on. Never mind, let's not even go down the whole rabbit hole with the conversion therapy groups, which fortunately more and more states are saying, no, that's illegal shit. You're not allowed to do that. Joseph, I want to get you first, and then I'll bope it over to Tech and kind of back so that we kind of get no kids. You get where I'm going with Joseph. Have at.
Oh, where to start?
It's to be fair, I know full well, kids or no kids, putting ourselves into these positions mentally.
I'm thinking to my own childhood, because I mean, going back to this, it goes beyond religion, because I mean, it comes back to this autonomous thought or not. You know, because if you don't think for yourself, whatever you've been programmed with is your survival guide. And basically, you have no other choice than to educate, quote unquote, your kids with exactly the same thing you've managed to make it thus far on. That's one education, quote unquote education, like scare quotes, education system there is. And then you've got the autonomous thought example. So you're going to see the same pattern everywhere, because I mean, physical punishment and physical abuse is just a means to break somebody, to break them out of autonomous thought, to basically crush them, crush any notion of independence. That's it. Yeah.
Say it.
Me?
Yeah.
Joseph, I put the thing in there because I thought that it was the term you were looking for.
Oh, what was it? Conformism? Yeah, well, conformism, but to a conformist, there's no other choice than conformism, because they don't know anything else. So basically, you've got
religion.
You've got bots. You've got robots programming robots.
That's exactly what religion does.
But you see this, it's even beyond religion. Religion is just the God thing. It's just the hook. I mean,
it might be beyond religion, but that's the tool that they're using right now.
Tech, we're closing up. Let him finish. You'll have your opportunity in a moment.
I am done, actually.
Oh, well, all right. In that case, go ahead.
Well, I hope that made sense. I mean, yeah, because if I left you hanging, that means I missed something.
No, I just didn't want Tech to be interrupting you, because we need to be wrapping, and I want to make sure that everybody's got their last item. So Tech, go ahead.
My logical response to this was, okay, there might be one or two things that were accidents, like, that somebody was using a nail gun to repair a board and it went off because of a misfire. I've dropped a nail gun. It's not a happy moment when that happens. Okay.
Who's using a fucking?
And if you've got kids around, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a responsible adult wouldn't be doing that with, in regards to being around a whole bunch of kids
And
with
that also
disabilities.
suggests-
Joseph, we're finishing.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I did it to him, But there's a lot on that list. And one of the things the article does point out is that the investigation found that unlicensed counselors cared for children with serious disorders and that children were often isolated from their parents for months with no way to report abuses. I'm sorry, when I went to camp, we always had a way to reach out to our parents. You do not cut kids off from their parents like that unless it's some kind of special boot camp, like, for example, even the Boy Scouts. Even the Boy Scouts had a means to get back to the parents through other adults, in some way, shape, or form. My emotional response? Here's my emotional response to those quote-unquote camp counselor, whatever people want to call themselves. That's my emotional response as a father.
Yeah. Fortunately, for those of you that are wondering, that was the business end of a muzzle. In this case, specifically a Nerf muzzle, but the point is well taken. I
just wanted to add in one. I put it in the comments, but to Tech's point, I wanted to add, not interrupt. But the nail gun, that also suggests that the kids were.
It could have been an adult who dropped it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also suggests that the kids were being made to work. What are they doing around a nail gun?
No, not necessarily. No. It could have just been a guy working on, like, a board could have come loose on, like, say, a cabin, and they were using a nail gun to put it back up, but it slipped, it dropped, the nail went flying off and almost hit a kid. Some kid thinks, oh, it was shot at me. Now, the other side of that coin was, could have been, they actually shot it at a kid who they felt was getting annoying.
Which is possible.
Possible.
It is not too terribly difficult to.
Right.
I just wanted to underline that the fact that child labor and slave labor still exists in the church and religious.
Agreed. No argument.
And it's quite possible the third option is exactly what Joseph is saying: is that some kid was using it and shot at another kid with it, or dropped it, almost shot him or herself. Could have been anything. We just don't have the facts.
Which is why I was saying at the moment,
the kids were on the work site and they weren't allowed to use the gun, but the adult leaders shot it at them because they weren't behaving.
Again, right now it's all alleged. We don't know what the actuals are, so we can only speculate at best.
It is pure speculation.
Yeah. And as far as withholding food from a child, if those children are truly disabled and potentially have dietary restrictions or dietary necessities, you could kill them, asshole.
Dalan, let me throw it your way because, again, kid, no kid.
Yeah. But I do have enough nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews that this kind of stuff still, it affects me in some way. And it affects, even those who are 1 degree away from me. Because, a lot of my nieces and nephews are now having families of their own. But, I remember how they grew up. And they're probably suffering the same thing. So, if there's anything I can do, or anything we, as more rational people, can do to make sure that a reasonable educational system is still in place for those 1, 2, and 3 generations beyond us, then that is something everybody, childless or with child or without, needs to think about. Like, a lot of people say, well, why should I have to pay a school tax? I don't have any kids. Well, no, but the person who takes care of wiping your ass when you're too old to do it yourself in the senior's home might be one of those kids whom your taxes actually saves and gives a decent education to.
Those kids are your future customers too.
Yeah,
and the more educated kid gets better wages and better customers they are.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't see that. They don't. To borrow a quote from a Conan magazine, they have the foresight of a milk-fed calf. They see nothing but the immediate future of that nipple in front of them. And when you're talking about escorts and stuff like that, that might be the thing too. But that's the thing, is there's so much short-sightedness in society these days. And
that's the thing when people don't know how
Joseph, we're done.
Yeah, we just don't know.
Dalan needs to finish.
I just don't know. To close this. I don't know how we're going to dig ourselves out of this. There are a small group of us that are more critical thinking and stuff like that. But I guess it's our generation that helps chip against the wall. The generation after that will chip against it. Maybe someday we'll get through it, but we're going to need a wrecking ball at some point.
Can I add to his point? Just one thing.
All right.
Because if we're going to contribute to a greater society, first off, we have to be responsible for our own survival before we can think about the survival of our fellow human. And like Dalan said, somebody who has no clue how to survive by themselves, they have only their own comfort level to go by, the here and now. And that's it. And I think that's the pattern that's happening.
So on my side of it all, having a kid, there is no way in hell I would let something like this happen in the first place. You guys would know, if anybody has listened to me long enough for any length of time, really, you would know full well, ain't no way I would let my kid have anything like this even come close. I mean,
I remember the whole thing you talked about with who going on that trip. Remember that one? The school trip? To that one location?
That probably would have been the 5th grade thing. Yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll deal with that another time, I'm certain. But here's the thing. Schools are for educational purposes. They are supposed to be for imparting the collective knowledge to the individuals so that they can either use it for themselves in order to continue to live, thrive, and survive, or to help later and to add to the collective knowledge later. We have the model of the library, which is something that goes back almost as far as human civilization itself. Almost. The idea that we have knowledge to impart, even though in the earliest, the library was simply passed down from tongue to tongue. Some stuff was written down, and a lot of stuff was written down. The library at Alexandria survived for, I forgot exactly how long it was. It survived for several hundred years, as I recall. I've forgotten exactly how long it is. We have no idea how much knowledge of the old was lost over successive generations, because it wasn't all destroyed in one shot. But there is another place where our continued knowledge, our continued exploration of the unknown is giving us the opportunity to relearn lost information. The stuff that was charred and otherwise what we thought of as having been destroyed in Pompeii. We have advanced to the point where we can actually start to lift the ink off of the charred pages from what used to be books or scrolls that were killed in Pompeii. We are slowly and steadily learning this stuff. We have pages of tomes that have ink on them, where after we look through the ink and scan the stuff in and lift the information from the ink, there are other scribbles on the back sides that were otherwise erased, that were otherwise covered over, that were the writings of other great minds that were lost for centuries. And we're now able to lift that up. Tell me, in which religious tome through the ages is the idea, the concept, the how to build, maintain, and operate a magnetic resonating imager that allows us to do this? Where is the information in any of these tomes that explains to us what blood pressure is and how to measure it? In which of these tomes is there information that actually properly explains what to do when a tsunami hits? The only way that we can continue to evolve and survive as a species on this rock is to learn how to surpass it, so that one day we're not relegated to just this one rock. One day, somebody will actually be able to look back here and go, that's home. That's Earth. And be able to see home as a distant memory. A speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Tell me which tome tells you how to get there. We need to get out of here. And of course, as always, everyone, thank you for being with us. We hope that you had yourself fun, found something worthwhile in all of our ramblings at some points. And thank you for being part of it all. We really do appreciate it. So all of you guys over there in the chat, thank you very much. Trippin, by the way, I just saw Egyptians were doing eye surgery. No, they were doing complete brain removals through the nose. It's a completely different animal, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, thank you to the class for tonight. Joseph, thank you very much for your time. You have yourself a good morning, and I hope that your week turns out well for you.
It's gonna be
cooler.
Oh, fuck! 2 days ago, that was hell. That was absolute hell. All-time record.
And that's
broken.
why Americans invest in air conditioning.
Yeah. What did you guys hit?
105. Last I saw.
42.24 the all-time record for Paris. And and I've got an Iranian friend coming in the week, and he just called me on the weekend and needed all of a sudden to find an apartment and come here. So I'm going to check up on how things are happening. Things are heating up between the Iran and U.S., no?
Yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. We're making deals with Saudi Arabia anyway.
Well, that'll fix things, later. Sure. Yeah, okay. But anyways, yeah, so I've got a lot of shit to look up on. So
you take care of yourself. Please be safe.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me on. And I'm sorry for, if I take discussions places, but there's so much to talk about.
Oh, I know. And believe me, the fact that we're at 2 hours normally anyway is a far cry from the hour that we started with originally. And it was just like, shit, we just got good. All right, fine. 2 hours is where we're going with.
Yeah.
and Joe, if it's getting real bad again, just remember to drink Brawndo because it's got electrolytes.
It's what a body needs.
It's what plants crave.
I'm gonna. Do I have to come down there and start smacking people? Joseph, please just be careful, stay hydrated, and seriously, you just be safe, man.
You just keep the tongue-to-tongue education system going.
Something like that.
Yeah. I like that concept, education through French kissing.
I could get behind that.
Unreal Tech, thank you very much for your time. You have yourself a good morning, and glad you were able to make it.
Yep, you guys have a good day too. And remember, don't come knocking while baiting.
You could slip and impale your finger. It's a whole other thing.
I like money. And don't forget, Costco loves you.
I'll just take your word on that. Dalan, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, as always. It feels like only yesterday that we were talking through a whole bunch of some of this stuff, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing how time flies. Must be that age thing. Anyways, one question or one thing. I won't be here next week. I'm just putting that out right now. Next week, I am heading to my hometown for a bit of a family reunion. Yeah, it's a family reunion. Some people know what it's about.
It's a family reunion.
Of sorts. Anyways, I'm leaving next Thursday, and I won't be back to my home base here until Monday evening. So that kind of nukes absolutely everything I do online for that entire weekend. It's like I'm going completely off the grid here, folks. But hopefully in the meantime I'll be able to get the audio version of the show up to date. I think I'm last week behind and this week, so I'll try to get that done. That's over at holycrapthevlogcast.com. And then of course for myself, if I got something else I want to bitch about, you can catch that over at inthewind.yo5.ca.
Yeah, that's the 8th, right?
Let's see.
Yeah, that's Thursday of next week.
Yeah, but no, next week or this week coming up, I'll be leaving August 1st, which is the Thursday.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong day. I'm just pulling up my calendar because I'm thinking to myself, you're right.
I'll be leaving August 1st, and I'll be coming back to my place on August 5th. So I'm back in the office and everything on the 6th.
Okay. So. I got you. Because I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, I don't have anything on my schedule. Maybe I'll cover your DJ time. Maybe. Well, somebody's got to do.
Yeah, I mean,
can't just point your fans.
Well, it's finally starting to get a decent audience now, so
I remember those days.
Oh,
I remember those days playing to an empty stream. I remember.
Oh, God. The sad part is I still get them.
It happens.
Yeah, although last Sunday, a mid-afternoon show, and I had literally taken over from somebody who was more into electronic music than anything else. I switch over to what I normally do. Everyone stayed. On a 50 listener stream, if you can peak at 22 after being back on the air in that slot for 2 weeks, you're doing something right. We'll see if that delusion holds tomorrow.
Good man. So, thank you all for being with us. If you'd like to go ahead and get in contact with us, all the information is, as was said, over at holycrapthevlogcast.com. We'd be more than happy to listen to you. If you want to send a voicemail message, that would be 859-HCTV-554, 859-4288-554. And of course, if you want to drop a couple of dollars, it's over at patreon.com/HCTV. Yeah, one of the few times I actually got HCTV. Fortunately, because I couldn't do that on Twitter because somebody else took it already. Fuckers. Whatever. Yeah, I'm not bitter. A little bit bitter. But be looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. As a reminder, today, because it's Sunday, I'm going to be up in Toronto later today in about 12-ish hours for the Fertile Equinox staff barbecue. Very happy to be helping out with that. I'm going to be making some ribs in the morning to take. Hopefully the border won't have a problem with that because I'm taking it for a barbecue. I mean, beyond that, we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys next week. It is probably going to be a little bit on the weird side because we have to start doing something a little bit different I'm going to making sure that I've got the final ironed out this week, because we are going to have to do a different way of doing it. There's a technical thing. We may have some problems next week, but we'll try to get through it as best we can. I will make sure that it is simply an open topic night. This way, if we have a problem, we're not going to run into any real problem, but we'll work it from there. Otherwise, you all have yourselves a good week. We'll be looking forward to seeing you very soon. And until the next time we get together, as always, I wish you all the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. And of course, my lady, all these years later, I am still in love. Matane Fujin. I love you and I miss you. Dream of me. As always, until the next time we get together, everyone, good night. And I hit the microphone yet again for the third time tonight.